This particular company that I'm referring to here, it's a lean manufacturing company. Now, I probably don't need to tell you much about a lean manufacturing company. I mean, they've the whole notion of operating more efficiently and eliminating waste and working in teams and that kind of thing. I'm not going to spend time on what lean manufacturing. I'm making an assumption that most of you are familiar with that. This was a lean manufacturing company. They'd been doing lean manufacturing training for over a year or so, and everyone had been through a lean manufacturing course. Now, this particular company manufactures hearing aids, and the HR person said that when they recruit people into the company, they're only interested in their hand skills and their eye coordination, the hand-eye coordination. That's all they're really primarily concerned with. They're not really concerned about their level of English or their formal education, providing they can do those manual tasks working in this hearing aid company. That's how they're recruited. Over 90% of the workers, English wasn't their first language. The work practices in this company varied from simple lacquering. I mean, when they produce this hearing aid, the actual hearing aid in silicon, one of the jobs is simply lacquering. It's simply painting it, just like painting your nails, so the guy said, which is pretty straightforward and easy for some of that. But there are also some quite sophisticated jobs involved in the modelling of hearing aids. It's very sophisticated to actually produce a hearing aid that exactly fits a person's specifications. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that modelling. The staff turnover was minimal. Most of the workers have been there for a long, long time, some of them over a decade. Everyone works in teams. There were 7 different teams, between 4 and 12 people in each team. There was a team for repairs, team for quality assurance, and a team for modelling. There was no specific training run. All the training, the learning was on the job. And as the production manager said, anybody at certain levels of skills can train somebody else to do the job. That's a little bit of background on the company that I'm talking about. Now, the particular lean aspects of this company, every single worker, there were about 70 workers in the company, every single worker had undertaken the certificate course in competitive manufacturing. A private trainer came out and worked with every single one of those workers during work time on site. They didn't take them off into a training room. It was all on site at the company. So it was a whole of organisation approach to lean production. The managers as well, production managers, even the HR manager did that course, and in fact the production managers and team leaders were now doing the diploma course. So everyone had an understanding of what lean manufacturing was all about. And I'm sure if you're familiar with lean manufacturing, this idea of a team meeting every single day, those 7 different teams, they all had a meeting, usually in the morning. It usually lasted about 10 minutes when they went over the production, how things were going, how things could be improved. And they had a team board, which again, if you're into lean production, you know it's a key element, with graphs showing how the productivity was going and that kind of thing. And those team boards assumed special importance. The team meeting was round the board every morning. And English was mainly spoken at work, but not always. I mean, the production manager said, look, we don't ban it. You know, if you've got 2 Vietnamese people talking together, the best way they can communicate is in Vietnamese. We only insist on English when there are other people around and that they're not part of the discussion in that case. Now, you might think, here you've got a company that's producing quite a very sophisticated product with almost all of the workers were born overseas in countries where English was not their first language, where they recruit people primarily on their manual dexterity skills and not on their formal education levels. You'd think that this would be a company where language literacy and numeracy issues would be an issue. You'd think it would be a prime case of, look, you know, should be an issue, should be a problem in this kind of company. These are some of the comments from the people that we spoke to in the company. Now, the production manager, when we asked him about language literacy and numeracy issues, he said, oh, look, I guess we find a way around it. It didn't stop anyone getting training or learning something in the company. When we spoke to the lean trainer from this private company doing the lean training course, she thought initially that they might require an interpreter because so many different languages are being spoken in that company. But in practice, she found, oh, look, we never actually needed a translator. There was always someone on the groups. There was always someone in a team that could give a quick translation. So if they couldn't understand, there's always someone there to provide that interpretation. She said also, we don't even refer to it as training because a lot of it's not in the classroom. It's actually on the floor. It's right there where they do the work. So these workers, almost in a sense, they were doing a certificate course, but they didn't know they were doing they weren't aware of it as being training. It was their work. It was very much hands-on. She said, we don't get complicated. We're trying to simplify things. Everything is very visual. But that wasn't because you're dealing with a population that might have trouble understanding. It was for everyone, making it simple, straightforward. And I think the last quote's a little bit interesting because it gives you an idea of the sort of approach to this company. There was one guy there, as a team leader, his name was Tan. I think he might have been Vietnamese or Thai background. His spoken English really wasn't that good. I mean, if you assessed him with one of your standard assessment tools, he would no doubt be found lacking in a number of elements. But other aspects of his work skills were just brilliant. She said, this guy, his graphs on Excel are amazing. And this team leader, the company had sent him off to Poland to train the people who produce the electrical components that go in the hearing aid. So here was a guy who, in a standardised sense, would have been identified as having problems with his spoken English, but was doing a brilliant job as a team leader, and it was good enough to send off to another country to train Polish workers. So it was kind of an attitude in this company of language literacy and numeracy to them wasn't a problem. It was a characteristic of some of their workers, but there were ways around it. It wasn't something that they needed to focus on specifically because all they were concerned about was productivity and workplace production. Just a few little things. The trainer said that we use visual a lot. In these graphs, if you're in the green, you're going okay. If you're in the red, it's basic beginnings of how she was teaching everyone to sort of understand graphs. I've got a picture just coming up that shows you the typical sort of graphs that they use in a team meeting. They started off drawing them by hand and stuff, and this will become a little bit clearer later. If people were having a problem, there was a team leader who was always there to brief them up. It's a peer mentoring. It's an evolving process, learning how these graphs. I'll give you I'm sure you're familiar with these. If you've ever done anything to do with lean manufacturing, this is the kind of what you see on the boards. Those graphs there, each one of those lines represents a day's work. If someone came in cold, a worker, and they look at that, they might, if they're not too good with their formal maths, they might think, oh, how would I cope? How could I understand that? But it wasn't an issue for any of those workers because they had all been brought through the lean training. They all knew that green meant that was what they'd produced during the day. That was okay. They were a day ahead. They all understood what the colours meant. It was part of their work. They learned how to do graphs just like they picked up any other of their work skills that they were required to do. There was no one there to say, oh dear, this is maths, can you cope with this? It was a work skill. That might give you a little bit better idea. I can't actually read that properly, those graphs, and I won't spend any time on it, but those workers knew that the green meant that was what they produced during the day. The red was, if they're in the red, that meant they were behind with their productivity, and so there was a visual sign for the teams, and every single person in that team, 4 or 5 members of that team, knew exactly what was going on every single day. The other thing about team meetings was that they rotated the person who ran that team meeting. So it might only be 10 minutes, but every single person in that team had their turn at talking and running the meeting in the morning. Now, if you think, you know, nearly everyone born overseas with an English not their first language, a lot of those workers were stumbling with their spoken English in a normative sense, but because everyone understood the work and because the team meeting was a bit of a formula really, the sorts of things they dealt with, it didn't matter. Accents didn't matter. Poor grammar didn't matter. What mattered was productivity, and everyone understood the issues. I also got a theory that really those team meetings are actually an excellent way of improving the spoken English of those workers in a completely unofficial, informal way. Because to public speak in front of your fellow peers in English was a skill that they all did, no matter how clumsily at times, and I think it was a way of improving their English.